a little bit about what you do at Burnout Game Ventures, because it's actually kind of cool when you explained it to us exactly what you do.
Well, Burnout Game Ventures is an incubator and publisher with a twist, where we help indie game developer teams create companies with horsepower. And what we mean by that is Orlando is well known for creating lots of startups, but not lots of jobs and lots of revenues from those startups. So what we do is we found out why indie game teams have a 95% failure rate to break even, and we fix that by providing you, the game developer, with all the resources, all the proprietary processes, all the talent, and all the kick in the butt you need in order to create great game experiences as quickly as possible. We have over 400 people in our talent pool. We have just under 90 people currently working on 9 projects for 6 startups. The average age of our startups is 3 years old, so I think we've proven the sustainability part. And we're here to help encourage indie game developers to do it right the first time, and to have a great career doing it.
Yeah, it's really something awesome. And if you don't know, and Rupert can back me up on this, Orlando is just a humongous indie development area.
Yeah, I think Remi probably has a better idea, but I think there's over 100 indie game teams in town that I know of.
Yeah, and new ones popping up every day.
Yeah,
I can't keep track anymore.
And part of that is because of the colleges we have here, right?
Yeah, UCF is one of the top. They have SVAD, which is the school for video and art and design, and they have they're ranked up there in the world. They have FIA, which is their master's degree program, which is ranked #1 in the world. And then where I used to teach project management for the game design master's degree at Full Sail, and that program is in the top 20 in the world. And then the game development undergraduate is also up there. So between those, I mean, there's 50 game-related curricula in post-secondary schools just within, 50 miles of here?
Yes, Jordan. It's not their distance away.
Yeah, so we got a great pipeline of talent that comes out of schools. The key is keeping them here.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, you're only offering me $80,000 and I can go to LA and make $160? And I'm like, excuse me, have you ever heard of anything called the cost of living? Yes. If you want to live in LA with the same standard of living that you want to live here, you need to be making $240, not $160. So make sure you got good curtains for your closet window. So now, Scott, you also got out of the industry, but you got into IT. And so you were exposed to project management from that standpoint for a long time. But now you're getting back in, you said?
Into game development.
Okay, so what's your secret sauce?
Okay, there's 2 ways to look at this, and I've seen it from both sides. One is the entrepreneur, where you're working with 4 or less people and trying to get a product out. And Colin and Remi were addressing that very well. The 30 years that I went and hid, before I came back to developing games, I worked on aeronautics software and other precision software where safety is critical. You don't want a blue screen of death at 20,000 feet. Not fun at all. One of the methodologies...
You weren't IT.
I was not IT. No, I was software development. And one of the process methodologies that I've come away from the professional software industry is called Agile, and specifically the Scrum methodology. I'm a certified Scrum Master. If you have a team of 5 or more, if you have a project that's going to be longer than 3 months, I highly recommend Scrum as a way to proceed, because what it does is it gives part of the project management to the creators. They take ownership of it. They take responsibility. Not only are they working towards the schedule, they're making the schedule. They're iterating, they're figuring out what's working, how are we working as a team. They're making constant changes to how the team works. The team is then focused on getting to the end of what they're doing. The product owner and the manager is external to that. The product owner can be part of the Scrum team or not, but he's the one who's saying, okay, this is what we need, this is what I want out of you, but he's not the one setting the schedule to do it. He's the one saying, tell me what it's going to take to do it. And they say, yeah, we've got the team for it, we've got the time, and it's going to work out. Or they're saying, we need more resources. So it's his job to then find those resources to make what's going to happen, as opposed to putting schedules in place that may be pie in the sky. So it, once again, depends on what you're doing, the size of what you're doing. If you got 5 or more individuals working on a project, I highly recommend looking at Scrum. But it does need somebody who's had Scrum training. There's 2 types of Scrum. There is the pure Scrum, and there's what we call Scrum butt. And you can get kicked in the Scrum butt if you're not careful. Scrum butt is, I'm doing Scrum, but I've changed this. I'm doing Scrum, but I've changed that. What then tends to happen is people coming out of a Scrum butt experience say, we did Scrum, but it was horrible. Well, that's because you didn't do Scrum. A Scrum Master is essential to doing Scrum. So any team that wants to succeed and wants to try Agile, train your Scrum Master. It's a 2-day training. It's worth it. And then follow the methodology. Don't try to pervert it, as it were. It can be tweaked. Not everything is set in stone, but some things should be set in stone. Follow it. It works. It's great. It's wonderful. And it's a way to go. Entrepreneurial-wise, if you're a small shop, don't even try to do Scrum. You don't need it. Do like Colin is saying over here. The different people will take ownership. You move forward. You have one person with the vision. Kick butt where you need it. Burn the midnight oil. That's fine. It works. That's where the successful ones come from. I'm sure Colin would agree. And probably
I've been waiting for you to pause, because I've never heard it, the Agile methodology explained so well and so concisely, and it is something that the ownership, getting your crew to take ownership, is the part that resonates so much with me, and even though ultimately I'm the guy who also makes the schedule, but I look to my guys. It's like, all right, how long, and again, how long do you think this is going to take? How long do you think this is going to take? Ultimately, I do the schedule because we are a small group, typically. We've been as big as 45 people. We've been as small as 4. But I loved Agile is the way to go.
Well, speaking from Burnout's standpoint, I've been involved in project management since 1980, and actually no, make that 90, yeah. And I've worked on projects like you would. I've been so fortunate from things. Started my first company when I was 20, and have had well over a dozen, and then some good, some bad, not so good. We won't talk about those. And
those are the best stories, though.
Yeah,
but not publicly.
I'm writing a couple books, actually.
There you go.
So, but I've worked on NASA projects and DARPA and banking software. I had my motion simulation company in the arcade industry from 1996 to 2007, and construction and all that. And I'll tell you, my experience has been that project management is basically, management is processes. So if you formulate the processes, then everything else follows. And so based on talking about what Scott was talking about, and also Remi and Brian, what we've developed is a mixture. So what we do is we tell the developers the first 20% of the schedule is no development. It's all planning. So it's like a waterfall methodology. And so by the time they're finished with that 20% of the schedule, they've got their game design document, their tech design document, their capacity plan, their work breakdown structure from which they're the back. I'm getting a brain fart. the stuff they choose.
Backlog.
Backlog.
We're talking back-
Where they get the
product backlog.
product backlog.
Product
They pull
backlog.
that from, and and everything else is ready so that they hit the ground running, and then we start implementing an agile, kind of like a Scrum, but we have smaller teams between 5 and 30 people, and their efficiency levels are so much higher at that point. But we're using Scrum because we know change is inevitable and resistance is futile. And so by using Scrum, what we can do is we allow change to be managed a lot easier and a lot better. But then you have the product manager or the producers that's just cracking the whip and saying, okay, this can be in there, this cannot be in there, and so on and so forth. But I will share this, that a well-known secret in project management is it's a hell of a lot better to release a quality product late and over budget than the other way around.
Yeah, definitely will agree with that. If you don't mind, since I am kind of the smaller individual here, I don't have the team of 30 or whatever, so some of you in the audience may be thinking, well, if I want to just do a startup and someday I want to make a game, like you're talking about project management, all these high level things, and I will just say as the smaller individual, even if it's just 3 guys, you can still work with a lot of these methods in mind. You can still design everything in a big, like, even as simple as a Trello task board with everything you want to do, break them down into small tasks and do things that's referred to as sprints, where every 2 weeks you work on a small group of features or tasks. You do a review, see where you are. The next thing goes into the next sprint, and then you keep working that way. Now, naturally, when you get bigger teams and you start doing all these things like we're talking about, like waterfall method, all those type of things, but as it sounds like, it trickles down.
Don't be intimidated
Don't be
by
intimidated
the
by that.
terminology.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I'll even go one better, or go one farther back.
Further back. Okay.
Whiteboard and dry erase markers. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
my office is filled with them everywhere, sticky notes.
The original.
getting the people in the room
Yep.
face to face is so much more important. Just like you're all here because we know that arcades were social back in the day, real social. Getting your designers, getting your team in the room. Face to face. I've been hired as a consultant, companies that were making games. They were taking 9 months, 10 months for little fast touchscreen games.
Yep.
Then they asked me to come in, at Game Refuge and help them get efficiency. And they were all talented designers, artists in the room, programmer in the room, working on the same project. The artist would have to get up out of his chair, walk down the hall, talk to the head of art, who would then go talk to the head of programming, who would come back in and talk to the programmer. And I'm just like, you're crazy. And then we got in there, we turned around 14 games on an average of 2.5 months a piece. And taught by way of example, because getting your people in a room is, all right, I'm sorry.
Inter-team communication.
Right.
Actually, that's probably one of the biggest.
One of the hearts of Scrum is the daily stand-up, and it is not meant to be a status reporting meeting to management. It is meant to be a status reporting meeting to the team.
Yep.
Each team member goes around and says, this is what I promised to do, this is what I actually did, and this is what is blocking me. And everybody takes their turn, answers those 3 questions, and by the time you're done with 5 people, you've made so many connections in that short 15 minutes that it is amazing. Then everybody knows where the blockages are, what's getting done, what's not getting done. So that's the key. People have got to talk.
Critical.
And exactly like how these guys were saying, I've worked personally in a company where, again, perfectionists, the ex-Disney Ghibli guys, and they kept all the artists in the room away from the development team, and I was the technical artist at the time, so I was the glue between the two. So I had to walk down there, and I had to talk with the programmers and say, guys, we need this feature in the game, and then the programmers would be like, why didn't you request that 3 days ago when I had the free time? And I'm like, because I just talked with the art director now, and he just finally used it right now. He's like, I made it last week for him, why didn't he use it? And I'm like, I don't know, go hug it out with him, not me.
Right.
So I've dealt with both ends of that. I am very much a big fan of communication being the biggest thing. Even as far as, since I'm new generation, I'm going to be the person that says this stuff. Discord, things like that, it seems silly, but you can use all this stuff for management, and you can follow all this stuff with a backlog of messages. You can timestamp, you can message people, it goes through emails. It all works with the same current generation of things. There is no excuse, especially in the age we live in now, that I didn't know or we didn't communicate, because I have a business partner who lives in Germany 8 hours ahead, and I work with that guy every single day, and he's like my weird unofficial wife that I message on my phone nonstop, and I'm like, where are we at with this? What's going on? I'm at the convention, the bill just broke, why is it breaking? And I have no excuse for why we should not have that communication. We live in an age of technology where everything's accessible literally right here with supercomputers in our pockets. There's no excuse.
Yeah, being remote does present its own.
It does. My whole team is all remote.
Yeah.
My audio guy lives in Poland. My business partner lives in Germany. So there's time barrier differences and everything.
Yeah,
and
we're
cultural
the same
differences
way.
of work etiquette. Us city Americans work very hard is always a joke that comes up. And I'm like, well, guess what? You're working with an American.
Yeah.
Get to working.
Yeah. So, like, for example, the team that made the game that we're testing out here, the members of the team are in Minneapolis, they're in Singapore, they're in Sao Paulo, they're in St. Louis, Detroit, and LA. And so, obviously, whiteboards don't work too well in that environment. And we use Trello, and we use Discord and Skype. But they have their weekly meeting, and then they have their daily meetings, and then we have our PMO meeting once a week, and that's how we try to keep the glue together. But our goal is, of course, to get these teams literally face to face as quickly as possible.
It's tough, but it is doable.
How many people in your teams?
The smallest is 5, and the largest is 30.
Okay, these are prime examples of Scrum. These can be pure Scrum teams if you wanted to. There are free web-based tools out there. Kanaji is one that comes to mind that you can use to take a group of people, they should be no more than 9 and no less than 5, and make Scrum teams out of. And use a remote tool like Kanaji where everybody is able to track their whiteboard. Originally Scrum started literally with sticky notes up on a board, and where everybody would go in and see it. But with remote located teams now, there are remote tools, and Kanaji is free. So this one is a gem. So I'm just throwing that out, something well worth using.
Awesome. I'm making a note of that right now. So we touched upon the subject, all 4 of us, but I wanted to tackle it a little bit more directly. What do you say about the adage, perfection is the enemy of good? Go ahead.
I've never heard it, but okay. Go.
Are we doing online things still? Okay. I work with a German guy, and we kind of know that there's a perfectionist attitude there. But I always joke with him, and I say progress, not perfection. And we always kind of go back and forth. And for those of you who saw my game out there with Floppy, there were a lot of choices that were made to get to that point, and I personally feel those are good choices, and he will do this and say otherwise every single time. But I always feel that it is good to show something that works and it feels good versus showing nothing that looks perfect and no one can enjoy.
One of the things,
Yeah.
one of the things you can do when you're starting a project that can help this problem is you define done. I mean, it sounds so simple. Define done. Tell me when I've reached done. What is it that I need? And when you reach that, stop.
Some people don't know that word, the stop word. They don't.
But if you've predefined your done, you'll know when you reach it.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we like to put a little waterfall into our
To put the planning up
to put the
front.
plan in place, is because what we're trying to do in the beginning is really define what the minimum viable product is.
Yes.
The MVP.
And then just tell the team, look, this is your alpha, just get it done. Just do that. Because
Good enough.
Right, good enough, because I've seen so many games that are out there, like I've worked with tons of indie teams, and they will have, when they first show me the product, and I'll look at it and I'm like, why haven't you shipped this yet? And they're like, oh, we want to do this and we want to do that. I'm like, no. Ship it the way it is.
Progress, not perfection.
Generate some revenues, generate some feedback, and then do version 2.0 with the feedback and the stuff that you want to throw in there. But at least you're making money. At least you're getting out there and developing a brand.
We live in the age of patches now, so unlike your day where a patch was a new physical arcade machine,
Right.
We live in an age where the character falls to the ground. Well, okay, we did an update overnight and it automatically updated, and nobody saw that except for the one guy that reported it. So we live in that age where, as you're saying, progress, not perfection. Just get it out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how come we always are looked at as the bad guys, because we say this to people who are very passionate. They're like, no, this is my blood I've given to this project.
Well, and, that's something that I think it's off topic, but just a slight bit that we haven't touched on. Maybe it's coming up as a question, but building the team is part of the designer's job.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Building the team. You've got to make sure that the people you've got working on this work well. They can be my partner Jeff Nauman on most of my great games from Midway, and then formed Game Refuge with me. Very different people. Big sports nut. I'm a artist nerd. Very different opinions, but we have a mutual respect. And he knows that if I've got a problem, and I know if he's got a problem, we're both wrong. If one of us has a problem, it isn't, and then you got to work it out. So I feel game design at its nature can be confrontational, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to have, but you've got to be able to work together. And building a team, I'm a lot different than you guys in that I've worked in one corporate entity and then I've worked in my own for the most part. But I've built some bad teams, or I've let some bad eggs in, and building a team is a really important part of project management, is having the right people for the job. And
one of the things
a little side note, that's all.
I do a lot of speaking, and one of the more popular things is words of wisdom for good project management. And one of those words of wisdom is the team always comes first. And so as long as you have the team putting that as believing that, then they'll also believe that differences of opinion are actually opportunities,
Right.
to grow
Exactly.
and to produce a better
Exactly.
product. So, and then another one is rule number 6, which is basically don't take yourself too damn seriously. So as long as they understand those things, then they should be fine. Yeah. So do you want to? Okay. So if you ran into yourself from 30 years ago, what would you tell yourself now? With regard to game development. With regard to game development.
Learn programming. First thing I would tell myself. I started off as an artist and I worked my way around. I worked thinking that I would design games by making art because it's the first thing you see, but then as I started developing games, I realized that art is the thing that sells the game, it's the thing that people talk about, but it's not the thing that makes the game function. And I slowly realized I want to be a designer before designers were really even considered a thing years and years ago. There was everyone doing everything during the arcade days. But if I were to go back in time, and I would want to not run into a lot of headaches I ran into, stability and all the other things in between, I would definitely say start learning programming, buddy, because that's not going anywhere.
Exact same thing, learning, but business. I wish I had taken business classes. I've had.
That would be the second thing I would say to myself.
The number one was business classes. As a guy who has been fortunate enough to stumble into this industry when I did, and fortunate enough to have a business model that others might envy, is that it's blind. I keep my head down. I work on what I'm working, and somebody taps me on my shoulder and says, "Hey, can you come do this?" That's a great way to make a living, but it's a horrible way to run a business. I mean, it really is. I wish I had taken business classes. I wish I had a better understanding back then between the difference between I'm getting paid for it and I would pay to do it, and then being in charge of the business. That's not who you want in charge of your business. If I couldn't have taken business classes, because I probably would have flunked out, I should have hired a business manager. Should have been the third guy between Jeff and I. We should have got a business manager 25 years ago. Other than that, yeah, that's without a doubt, that's the first thing I say I would do differently.
Okay, cool.
I would probably say to my younger self, I'd give you some words of wisdom, but I know you won't listen to me, so I'm not going to bother. Honestly, what I would say would be put God first. Literally, put God first. You do that, everything follows.
Awesomeness.
Yes.
Let's see, what would I do? Well, I would tell myself to go find a good ass kicker. Okay? Because, when I got my MBA, I already had 4 businesses, and, it was just more just a rubber stamp than anything else. But it's, when you're an entrepreneur and you're in an unstructured environment, and if you've got ADHD, even worse, and it's like,
Really
you need to have somebody that is a good accountability partner.
I'm going to interject something here and say that I totally agree with that. And I actually gave my wife the job of extending the right foot of fellowship whenever she felt I needed it.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're right. Advisors is a really good thing, because after the third or fourth company, I realized that I couldn't do it myself, and so I went out and got advisors. So right now, BGV's got 24 world-class advisors. Dennis Price from World of Warcraft, and Pascal Laban from Assassin's Creed, and we got John Hansen from Madden Mobile, and just all kinds of people. And so they're the ones that are trying to keep me in check, as well as hitting the guys over the head on a daily basis. So you definitely need that, and putting God first, right? A person of faith doesn't have any reason to be anxious about anything.
Exactly.
And gamers are the most anxious people I know.
I tell everybody, I kind of dilute it down a little bit. I say follow your heart, because
that's what comes. Yeah.
God is in my heart, so
right.
Maybe that's the unspoken part. But follow your heart. If you're going to if you believe you're going to get there, you're supposed to get there, you'll get there. And you may not have the answers now, but
finding
the answers is what a designer does. If you've got what it takes to be a designer, you're going to get there. So follow your heart is...
You're given a question, you have to kind of figure out how to solve that question.
Right.
That's the job of designers always.
And find the people that are gonna help make your game and your company whole. Okay?
Yeah.
Because especially if you want to look for investment, investors will give their money to an A team with a B product over a B team with an A product 8 days a week. So make sure you get that team. So I guess we wanted to open it up for Q&A. If anybody had any questions for us, we'd be delighted to take them. Well, okay, so the question is, looking at comparing game developments or games that were out today compared to, say, 20 years ago, how do we tolerate the fact that now you're shipping games that aren't perfect, and you've got loads and loads of patches you got to load?
I think what's happening is the definition of done and the bottom line are conflicting.
Well, that's always the case.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be.
I know it doesn't have to be.
It didn't used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be when you shipped a game, it was done. It meant done. For myself, I know in AI, we didn't have the option of being able to ship out patches if we made a mistake. We had to ship games that really were done and finished. They were smaller.
A lot less technical.
Yep, a lot less resources went into creating them. It is a problem today that the bottom line, which is important, and if you don't take care of the bottom line, everything else collapses. The problem is the bottom line is not realistic, and that has got to be addressed. I like your statement where you said broken is the enemy of consumers.
I'm actually going to remember that one. That's a really good one.
I always feel like, again, being lucky enough to stumble in when I did, and I'm working for a manufacturer, and that's driving you on the one side, and the bottom line saying, how do I get the quarter out of this person? The operator wants the player to be off in 30 seconds, the player wants to live forever, I got to make them both happy. I had the best world to learn how to design because, like I've mentioned to several people, why I love coming to these shows, I never thought I'd have this experience again. Watching people play the games is not the same as a focus group, is not the same as play testers. Watching people pay for every iteration was the best way to learn whether or not your game was where you thought it was going to be, and it never was. Players found stuff early that you never thought they would find. That would be months away. No, they've got that 2 weeks. They would play longer than you thought it would be humanly possible. You know, I had that environment, and I urge people that, you know, independent developers, and now there are people doing coin-out independently too. I urge them to I know it's free to play out there in the arcades most everywhere anymore. Yeah. But if you are making a game that you want to find out how good it is, find yourself a mom and pop location, put a coin thing on, and then go stand in the back and watch it. Because that is the best way to make sure that the game gets done.
It's not only for arcade games, it's for PC games, for mobile games, all the others.
Yeah,
play test, and watch your play testers.
Right, right.
And see how they're reacting. See where the emotions are. See what's drawing them in, what's pushing them away.
That's what we're doing this whole weekend.
Yep.
You know?
And you watch. It's not the same as what's on the paper. It's not the same as the numbers. Okay.
We have some more questions.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of seems like, you know, like looking at the games out there, you know, it's kind of, you know, somebody would either buy a game, and I guess it's kind of true for maybe some of the earlier consoles too, where, you know, you buy a game and, you know, you'd kind of be expecting to play that for, you know, a good, you know, 6 months or so. You know, those games are supposed to be out for, you know, however many years or whatever. But it seems like now, you know, just like the movies that come out in the theater, you know, it's basically, you know, they come out on a release date, and you kind of are hoping that basically you make a ton of money or a ton of sales on that first week, and then after that, you know, it just kind of just
disappears.
It disappears, or, you know, people are just, you know,
unless it ends up in a humble bundle.
Right, and they want it to go, you know, for 75% off sale on Steam or whatever.
Actually, the humble bundle tends to be the most lucrative for the studios. Mm-hmm. They make their most money when a humble bundle comes out, and they look forward to being part of that because there's collectors out there. Mm-hmm. They'll buy games they'll never play, but they're buying it. Why? Well, because it's so cheap. I can't turn away from it.
To also kind of touch on what you're asking, it very much, and please don't hate what I'm about to say, guys. I'm looking at this like from a Nintendo standpoint. There are releases that the game industry tries to hit, very much like the movie industry, because they're time framed when it's the peak season. And even independent guys like me understand that. Christmas time, it's a toy. New toys for kids, games, as much as they are their own art form, or whatever you consider them, or whatever, in the end of the day, it is made to be entertaining, and whether what age you are, it's a type of a toy. It's Christmas. That is a big deal for us. In the game industry, that's our biggest crunch time, AAA. I've worked a lot of AAA studios where between the October-November time period, my life was hell because I was there for like 9,000 hours, 28 days a week, sitting there at my desk trying to get that product out just before Christmas because it had to be done for Christmas.
Because you have a real deadline. This is an actual date you have to meet, or you don't get to the market.
Or you don't eat, and that's the truth of it.
Yep.
And as you're asking for like all the games and various titles or whatever, unfortunately for every one good game that comes out that gets maybe the young YouTube guy that streams them with 9,000 little kids watching, they all buy the game, there's 2,000 copies of that game that see the success of that one. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of read between the lines and try to gravitate towards something new. But because now we live in an age where games are so much more accessible than they were even 15 years ago. Yep. I mean, let's face it, Unreal Engine, I was in the private development of that years ago, and then like 2 years later, it became open to the public, and not everybody was an Unreal developer. Mm-hmm. And years before that, you had to know how to work circuit boards. I mean, there was a different time period. Any of you could literally go out today, go online to YouTube,
If you have the
and make a game.
passion, you can develop a game.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and that's part of the problem, unfortunately. Everybody can do it. So you're going to have hard ones that sell versus the really good ones, and they sometimes get lost.
And how do you differentiate?
It's tough.
Yeah.
You're fighting an uphill battle.
That's why we get the big bucks, folks.
Yeah. Well,
I have a tip jar by my booth if you want to come by.
There's got to be
exactly.
there's got to be something special in it. No Man's Sky. Who bought one? Raise your hand. No Man's
No,
Sky.
I support him.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah. I'm not seeing a lot of hands, but this was a popular PC game that Steam just went bonkers on. Okay, let's try another one. How many played Myst? No, a lot more hands went up. Physical media? Yeah, okay. This is, then you had more limited audience. Today, No Man's Sky is a runaway bestseller, but very few hands went out here that people bought it.
I got you. PUBG.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. That's
PUBG.
still the popular one right now.
Yeah.
Overwatch.
Overwatch.
Oh, see, Overwatch is starting to die. It's dying. It's already been 1 year. 1 year. I tell this to my students all the time because I deal with students very new in the program. I say the same thing. Games are like movies. There's a time period where they're popular, but then they go to the DVD section eventually. You can watch them later, and you can enjoy them, but not everybody's going to go watch it anymore. I still watch Jurassic Park, but it's not in movies anymore. Same thing like games. Except Myst. Oh, yeah.
It's probably important to look at the difference too between AAA titles and indie titles.
It's true. Yes.
Because indies don't want to release games in December because we can't compete to the literal
You get buried.
billions of
You get
dollars
buried
of
there.
marketing being spent by the AAA games. But we want to release in January because by that time everybody's played their $60 game and beaten it, and now they're looking for something else. And
All
then-
4 hours of it.
yeah. And now they want to play something else. And the other thing I wanted to say was, yes, the typical sales curve is you have a release where within the first week you sell 30% of your yearly total, and then it drops down to nothing. Your goal, of course, is to make sure that nothing is not 5 units a day, but 20 or 30 a day. And then, of course, you've got your humble bundles and your other sales and so forth. But the other thing I've noticed, and I've seen it, the more I look into it, the more I see, is there's a lot of games on Steam, for example, that are wonderful games that are languishing, but every once in a while you'll see one that's been out there for a year to 2 years or 6 months or whatever, and all of a sudden it takes off.
Oh, I can answer that question if
Yeah.
you want to know the answer to that. It's a new generation thing. Who has little kids with them right now? Anyone? Or like has like little ones?
Got 9 of them.
Okay. How many of them are on their phones, on their iPads, watching YouTube videos of people playing video games? Just be honest. Okay, that's your answer right there. A YouTube guy finds an obscure game because they want to be the new YouTube guy doing something obscure, being funny or whatever they may be, and then they watch it.
They drive
and then
the
they
interest.
go and buy it, and then it becomes like this uphill thing. It's happened in a lot of games over the last year. This year specifically, it's what happened with PUBG. That's what got that popular. It was let's be honest, it's a very broken game.
I'd like to find one of
It's
those
fun.
guys for Bit Evolution.
Seriously,
So that would be good.
I'm trying to find one of those guys, be like, oh, look at that, it's this game with a rabbit, this is amazing, and I
Nice.
have like everybody playing it overnight. That's the
Nice.
dream.
Well, we had PewDiePie actually review our game, but it was under false pretenses. So, but he
no.
loved it, so that was wonderful.
Can I just say thank you to you guys? I mean, it's really cool to see all you guys up here. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. Remi for coming out and being with all these guys. These two awesome game developers, and of course, Burnout Game Ventures for just coming out and hosting this whole panel. Super awesome. You're still going to be here for the next how many hours do we got left?
Another hour or two.
1 hour. So if you want to test the game, now's the time to do it.
Everybody say hey.
Hey, guys.
And can we get a big round of applause for our game developers? Thank you so much, guys.
I could sit and listen to you guys talk.